So for the record, welcome to section 81. Right on that front screen there, underneath where it says section 81 is the link to our agenda today. We'll be working off of that. Like all our classes and everything we do here at CSU Monterey Bay and our ED615 class, everybody's welcome, and you're all welcome to participate and be involved. The next slide just talks about the Zoom info, which I showed you all before. I'm just flashing it at you so you see it again. It may be something that's useful for the students you work with as well. I'm choosing, I'll try, let me think what I'm doing next. Yeah, I'm gonna click through this way because in just a minute, I'm gonna have each one of you share and I wanna be able to see your faces. So I'm gonna go through like this for a little while and then I'll switch to presentation mode. Can you all see the slides okay? Okay, great. Even if you nod your head, I'm looking at my other screen so I can see your faces, so thanks. All right, so for today, our compelling questions are, what do I need to do to complete the History Social Science module, which is our next big assignment in this class? And then specifically, how do I create an inquiry-based lesson? So our objectives are to understand how state curriculum is developed, because that all plays into that. I've been meaning to share that with you, but we've had a little few incidents that have kept me from being able to share that. So today you'll learn the components of creating an inquiry-based lesson, and you're also going to have time to plan with your grade level group today as well. So, and you can see that our time schedule across the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is all there. We're starting all together in this group Zoom like this. At one point today, we're logging out of this Zoom, and you will all log into your grade level Zooms that hopefully your grade level facilitators have put together. You're going to go into that meeting for about a half hour, and then we'll come back as a whole group like this at the end. So if you recall our class, it's kind of like we have always done it in our class, where I always check in with all of you. We do some activity, we reflect on that, and then sometimes you break in other groups, we do other things, and then we come back and talk about how it all went together. So we're going to do the same thing here today and see how that works out. And just as you all know, I continue to try new structures in different ways to see what's working and what doesn't work. I was really excited how well all the things worked last week with all 55 of you in one Zoom room and how that broke into groups. So also just remind you that consider this as a safe space. You have permission to make mistakes, take risks. Some of these topics may be uncomfortable, and for many of us right now, there's a lot more that may make us uncomfortable than just the topics in this course. And because of that, we all learn, right? We all learn how to deal with this stuff, and then we move forward. So that's part of the excitement and the challenge of being a teacher. Our class norms and mission remain the same. Our class norms are be present, be supportive, be inclusive, be respectful, learn from each other, take risks, allow others to take risks, and our overall class mission is to gain a deeper understanding, to teach about our society's identities and historical backgrounds through a multicultural lens by listening and voicing authentic local stories. So yeah, so that all still applies. And I really like this quote, which is why I'm including it here, and it leads into something else which we'll do in just a second, that as vibrant beings, we vibrate an energy into our learning environments. And I would say that learning environment, whether it's face-to-face or online, you vibrate that energy. So your faces, the way you interact, the backgrounds you choose to have in your screen, the clothes you choose to wear, all of those things bring energy into our class at this point in this online world. And that's true here, and it's true for the classes you work with as well. One of the things I decided to shift on is that there are different food groups who are in charge of food, right? We had food every week, but we're not going to get to have the pleasure of that. But I thought, oh, let's have some inspirational food. Nancy, I'm just reading your comment there about Zoom being banned in MPUSD. That's another interesting story we'll have to talk about another time. But I wondered, so I emailed the food people today. A couple of you responded. Do you want to put the link in the chat room that you shared with me? I think that was Melody. But if the other person, anybody else, Melody, you want to share that verbally with us?
Yeah, it's currently in the chat.
Here, I'm clicking on it.
And then I'm just going to read off what I emailed.
Can you see that, everybody? Can you see what's in my screen? Okay, good. All right, Melody, go.
What I ended up saying was, here is a good, inspiring quote from Instagram. I feel as a student teacher, I'm trying at the best of my ability to learn how to quote unquote distance teach. What I found that it is okay to do what I can do and let that be enough in a crazy time like this. We're in a world pandemic, not only having to do all of our course work online, but also being there at unassigned hours for the classroom to prepare for distance learning and creating a quote unquote new norm at home. So like we're just going through all of this change, and I think at the end of this quote, do what you can do and let that be enough, really stuck out to me.
Great, thank you. Is there anybody else who was on food tonight that wants to add anything else? So I will send out the food list, and the people who are in charge of food in the future weeks, we've only got 2 more class sessions. You can share your inspirational food with the rest of us at that point. So great, thank you. So I want to remind you that we've been talking for the whole semester about this different stuff that we learn in history, social science. It's not just, this doesn't just apply to history, social science, but everything we do in teaching, that there's knowledge of students, there's content knowledge, and then there's pedagogical knowledge. We focused a lot at the beginning of this course on knowledge of students and how you do that. In the middle there, we're looking at frameworks and standards, and you were supposed to download those with your digital binder. So hopefully you've looked at those. Those were some assignments we had kind of in the transition weeks there. And now we're really officially moving into more pedagogical knowledge. So we're gonna talk more about that overall as we go through. So that's why my little star is there. We're gonna talk about pedagogy in lots of different ways today. So we'll move on to that, just to put it all in that framework as we go along. So I wanted you to think a minute with me. Once the coronavirus shelter in place happened, I made some adjustments in this course, and I'm curious if you noticed. Because as I've said to you before, I hope you notice the things I do intentionally so that you see why I'm thinking what I'm thinking, because that's the same thing that hopefully you're doing in your own teaching. So I'm curious from you, and you can either unmute and just answer or type in the chat room. What are the processes or strategies that I'm modeling for you that can apply in your teaching? What has been my focus? What have I done to comfort you, rebuild your confidence, and help you get back into our course learning? What are some of those things you've noticed, Al? Or at least I've attempted to do those things. I'm not sure it's totally worked, but I did make some things different. So what have you noticed?
Rob, I've noticed that you've just asked us a lot about how we're doing to start things off. Oh, are we supposed to be writing?
No, you can. No, I said you
Okay.
can either verbally say that or you
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that you've checked in with us through email and just I mean, I think I went to that first meeting that you had the week we were off, and that was like when it all had just happened. And I know like the people that were there, like you just pretty much just asked us, how we were adjusting, and I thought that was comforting.
Yep. And that was an intentional decision on my part to give up the grading and focus on all of you. So I'm not that I'm giving up on grading, but I could have spent my time working on grading or checking in with you. And I made the decision that it's more important to see how you're all doing. So I did do that. Thank you. So I did change some of the due dates. Some of the assignments have changed. Yeah, I've checked in with you a couple different ways. I appreciate you noticing that. And then, as I go through my grading, I'll be checking in with more of you, because if your assignments aren't done, then I worry about you not completing things. Yeah, so I've shared my thinking process as well. Remember, I gave you that document. I've kind of been open about what I'm thinking about things, how I'm doing that, because that helps, I think, you as students, and I would say the same is true with any students we teach, that it kind of opening up, to whatever thinking you're going through. And that's a good thing to kind of think out loud as a teacher. Yeah, and you're right. So I appreciate all those thoughts there. Christina pointed out allowing different modalities of being able to participate. So yeah, I thought about that a little bit as well. And then we get different opportunities here. And yeah, and so I've used Zoom a lot of different ways, partially just because I enjoy the technology and enjoy playing around with it, and challenge all of you to do the same. So hopefully you're doing those same things with your own students, because again, the knowledge of students, connecting with students is first, and we go from there. So along those lines, I just wanted to say to all of you that we continue to learn together. Please continue to send your emails to check in with me. If you don't say anything and you don't turn in any assignments, then I don't know what's going on with you. So I appreciate all that's going on, and I'm assuming if I don't hear anything that everything's good with you. At the end of our class today, I'm going to have you do one of my ticket out the doors, and in that is another way that will kind of give me an idea of how you're doing as well. So you've done that for me in other classes, and so I will appreciate that as well. And so now I'm going to spend some time, as we've done in our other classes, is just to go around and check in with each one of you. And I would, so these are the 3 questions to think about. I'm going to click out of these in just a minute. So hopefully you're looking at the slides, but you choose one of these. How are you, either professionally or personally? What's something you've learned about online teaching, or any other observations or information you want to share? And I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to pause the recording. Great. Thanks, everybody, for sharing where you're at. I appreciate that. And I always think, it's good to have that class meeting at the beginning and kind of know where everything is at. So now I've got a couple thoughts for all of you. So, with coronavirus, we've got this new shelter in place, all these regulations. And, people can look at this a lot of different ways. I choose to look at it as a new opportunity. It's new teaching. It's a new way to connect with kids. I think about the personal impact, and personally, we all have to deal with this in our own ways. But for me, I'm going to believe it's time to move beyond the shock and the stress and settle into what I'm going to call the new normal. So this is our new normal. We're going to be this way at least the next 2.5 months, and there's a possibility this may carry into next September, or November. So I'm kind of in that reality and moving in that direction. So I'm going to say this to all of you one more time, to say, if any of you are not going to be able to fully function in this class and finish our credential program, please let me know so we can help figure out ways to make it all work for you, right? There's lots of ways to defer this work or finish it later, and especially with the way things are now, we're going to be more flexible with you as far as what we can do. But if you're in this class to finish it out the way it's planned, then we're going full steam ahead. So I just wanted to kind of say that and say it in a way that I want to just make sure you're all successful. And I believe my role, like I've told you before, is to help you be successful. But hopefully we can move on from the challenges and move forward. And that hopefully with the students you teach, you're able to encourage that in them as well, because we all want to get back to what the new normal is. So what is the new normal? In my mind, everything's going to be via Zoom or Google Hangouts or Google Classroom or whatever tools you are. That's the new normal. There's going to be limited face-to-face time, right? And as many of you pointed out, it's going to be a lot of screen time. So we got to start being creative to think about how not to be on the computer all the time. I know I'm guilty of that and frustrated with that. And then there's this need to work and collaborate with others in a way we haven't done before. Because to really be successful in this world, in the online learning world, you really can't do it by yourself. In face-to-face teaching, you could do it yourself. You could, say hi to people, walk into your classroom, close the door, and you're all on your own. But in online learning, it's really hard to do it all by yourself. So, and then we all have this online technology struggles and challenges, whether it's sound or visual, or the phone doesn't work, or the link doesn't work, or whatever. That's the new normal. It's just how it is. So, um, you know, it's just the way it is. Our challenge, I think, is how do we make online learning more dynamic? We're going to talk about that in a minute. So be thinking about that. You know, it's pretty easy to think about how you could all lecture and record your lectures or record a lesson and put them on YouTube and say to kids, now go do it. But I think we know that that's not really the most dynamic use of this technology. But it's an opportunity to learn new ways to deliver curriculum. I forget it, Sandy or Stephanie pointed out that I think there's going to be some transitions here where we're going to realize that, ooh, some of this technology works good with the face-to-face component, you know? But now that we're being forced to use it, we're going to figure that out even better. So we're going to have an opportunity to explore more dynamic online content. One of the things I saw on Twitter was this by Dr. Seuss: I will teach you in a room. I will teach you now on Zoom. I will teach you in your house. I will teach you with a mouse. I will teach you here and there. I will teach you because I care. So just do your very best and do not worry about the rest. And that kind of goes along with what Melody shared with us earlier as well. So we've got to look at all these angles and enjoy the parts that are there. I would encourage you to look at the funny songs videos and different GIFs that are out there. One of the links that was sent to me somewhere, I am a huge Neil Diamond fan. He kind of grew up with Neil Diamond, and he rewrote his Sweet Caroline song called Hands Washing Hands. So that link's there. If there's other things that you've seen and you want to type them into that slide, then we'll have more things to share. So, you know, these are all things that get us through. I always admire people that can, you know, joke about things like this or see the satire in situations, stuff that I'm not very good at. I know a good joke when I see it and I can laugh at it, but creating the joke, that's not me. But I sure admire other people that do. So it was pretty cool that he and other people have done the same sorts of things, brought music together in lots of different ways, which is an interesting piece I'm just realizing is that all these musicians, you know, if you come on Zoom, I have got 4 siblings and we all grew up singing. So we tried a couple weeks ago, all getting on Zoom and trying to sing together. And we learned pretty fast it did not work because your voices don't carry in the same way when you're in different locations. But for the musicians that have made it work, it's pretty amazing, the recording and that sort of thing. So lots of that's on TV right now, which I think is pretty awesome, right? Because it's music and the arts that really help us carry through challenges like we're in right now. So there are various structures and voices in online learning pedagogy, right? And I just want to bring this to your attention, and it's true face-to-face as it is online. There's teacher to student, there's student to teacher, student to student, students to public, public to students. Parents are kind of in that mix a little bit, especially more in the lower grades. And then there's students to curriculum content. Generally, when students work individually, what we give them to interact with. So I wanted to ask you, and you can either just jump on a microphone and say this, or you can type it in the chat room. What types of interactions have occurred in this class so far today? Which ones have you noticed, and what are those examples?
Well, student to teacher when we were answering how we were either professionally or personally.
Right?
I would say probably like just getting help from peers, like when Christina helped me get back onto Zoom, and like you directly putting the link on there for me when I asked a question about the slides.
So that was student to student and teacher to student, huh?
Right.
Yep. So later today, we're going to, like we did last week, you're going to have student to student time because you're all going to form those groups. And I'll get to drop in and listen in a little bit, but just know that we're moving in that direction because good online learning creates all those different structures just as in face-to-face, right? You all know, especially because you all teach elementary school, you can't just stand up there and lecture to kids all day. You got to have them do a variety of activities in a variety of different ways. So Online learning, some of that stuff can happen, some of it can't, but that leads me to this next question. So as we think about online learning pedagogy, so I would say they're static pedagogy, and I'm going to just fill in a few of these. So this would be lectures recorded. And I would say this would be lessons recorded. Can you think of other static types of online learning pedagogy that you would add there? And again, if you're on this slide right now, you can click on it and add your own. What are some of those things that we would say more static? In other words, it's more teacher directed.
Are you, is it have to be relate to the current model of online?
What are you thinking about?
Well, this could be either or, but I mean, was it static if you show a video, like that interaction to your students?
Ah, good point. So I'll put down here, show a video. And you don't have to answer this, but I'd ask the rest of you to think about, so when you show a video in the classroom, is that a static activity? It could be both, right? Depending how you do it.
What if you recorded yourself doing a read aloud and then you posted the video for like the following day's PowerPoint slide or something? Would that be static?
Well, what do you think?
Yeah.
From online learning research, we know that if you as a teacher record a read aloud or something like that, it has more impact on your students than if you simply went to Reading Rainbow and had, oh, that guy, I forget his name, have him do it. So yeah, so let's just put down here, record a teacher video is certainly more engaging and interesting to your students than simply pointing to somebody else's. I'll put that in both.
Yeah, I guess I can.
Teacher read aloud, because I think the other piece is, does it fit with your curriculum as well, right? You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and like for me, like the first graders, like it's a lot of sing-alongs for reading, videos. So it is interactive. Like, so I think it's dynamic in that sense too, because they're doing something in response to the video.
That would be pretty dynamic to do a teacher sing along, right? You couldn't have everybody have to be on mute, but the teacher.
Yeah, I mean, we played YouTube videos, is what we did, and Lexia. But yeah,
right.
I'm not one of those people that could play the guitar and sing, but
yeah,
I do sing with them when I'm in the class and we're watching the video. But
yeah. So other people are typing in, and I appreciate you joining here. That if you just assign like, go to this website and read it or something, that's pretty static. Somebody started to type questions and answers. I wasn't sure what they meant with that, but that's okay. So those are examples of static online learning strategies that we could use. What would you say are more dynamic things?
Jigsaws activities.
Yep. So a jigsaw activity would be a good one that you could do. You could break people into groups and have them interact. I'm not sure that would work with first graders. It'd be a lot more challenging, but maybe Myrna or other people that are teaching first grade might have some ideas there. Having office hours. Yeah, office hours, at least you're connecting with students. I'm not sure if office hours are dynamic. But that's just my personal experience. So I think we could put that in both categories. But what are some other teaching things, pedagogy that we could include? So Flipgrid interaction through apps. Yeah, so using apps, if students are responding to questions online or things like that, that's much more dynamic. What else would be more dynamic? Go ahead.
So I think a dynamic part of this online learning or distance learning could be providing more feedback. I know our district is really pushing for more authentic feedback for students, and While it can be done in the classroom, I think it can get tailored in a little bit more specific way on online learning. So I don't know, I know that assign a lesson on iReady is in the static category, but I feel like it could possibly be in both categories. I think maybe we're a little burned out on the whole iReady situation. I think the students are burned out on it. But the nice thing about iReady is that it offers immediate feedback for students to tell if they're doing things correctly, or at least in math. And that's really important to know if they're going down the right path, thinking different ways, whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's all how you use those tools to make them more or less dynamic, right? Somebody typed in Google Forms as oh my gosh, who was just talking? Darn it. Jessica was just talking. I was thinking about teacher-involved lessons are more dynamic than non-teacher involved. So if you just post something online, it's not as dynamic as you actually being there. So doing a teacher read aloud with students in the Zoom room, reading it at the same time and recording it is more dynamic than just recording it. It would be like me recording this with you and saying, go listen to this, right? This is more dynamic. It may not be the best, but it's certainly more interesting and involved than if I simply recorded this. Other dynamic thoughts that you have? Good. Well, that was part of the purpose of this, was just to start thinking about those things that you are doing. And as you interact with in your classes with your co-teachers, if you have that opportunity, you can keep thinking about, is there a way to make something more dynamic or less dynamic? But I would also caution you that making things more dynamic takes more time. And you have to balance your time with all those things you're doing. So be intentional about that as you're thinking about it. But it's important to think about what works and what is your preferred mode of learning and what your students are as well.
Rob,
So
can
go
I
ahead.
make a comment on that?
Yeah.
I think what has been a little bit more challenging as for myself, because this is going to be, or it was our second week of online learning already. I noticed that all of my kids weren't logging on at the same time, so it had to be a little bit more static, because I had students who, if I did like a live Google Meet lesson and I was hoping that they would all get time, some of them would be at the babysitter who didn't have internet, or they would forget their charger, or their parents had them out and they didn't go back home until a certain time. So it was just kind of being mindful that my kids have unique and sometimes more static, because you're not going to be able to get them on there at the same time. But of course, I agree, it is beneficial for them to be able to interact with you and answer questions, but at the same time being mindful of their unique living situations.
Right. So and so I think that's a whole other dynamic, right, that we have to deal with now, is the connectedness piece. So I'm glad you brought that up. Who said that?
Christina Mendoza.
Oh, Christina, thank you. I don't see all your faces, and I can't tell who's talking because I'm sharing my screen. But anyway, I think that's really important. And then, so the other thing to keep in mind, though, and again, this is how you balance your time, is, for the students you haven't seen online or haven't connected that way, there's always the phone. So don't forget that that's the lowest common denominator, I think, in most households, although I understand that some people don't have phones, and that's even more challenging for sure. But I also might suggest that becomes an issue then to, quote, push up the chain of command to, a vice principal or principal level and saying, hey, I can't teach these kids because they don't have access. What are you going to do about it? Or what can you do to help do it, in a positive way? Because what I do know from talking to all of you now is that many school districts have figured it out and are working on it. So that's pretty exciting. Anyway, any other thoughts about static or dynamic?
Rob, right now that you mentioned making phone calls, I don't know if a lot of you guys are aware, but through Google, your Google account, you're able to make phone calls that way if you don't want to share your personal number. So I've been contacting parents because I don't want to share my personal number, and then that's how I communicate with them.
Oh, good. I'm going to just put down here Google phone calls. Do you have to activate that first, or is it just automatic?
It was already activated in my
Okay.
personal, so you could just go to Meet, and I'm actually, yeah, I think it's the same app we use too for Google Meet. It's the same one, but phone calls.
Great. And I know when I was principal of the online school, I had a Spanish teacher, and he would have students call a number and record their voice in Spanish, and he would listen to those and grade those things as if they were face to face. So there may be some of that technology you can play around with to see, again, just to start building some interaction with some of those students that otherwise you may not have access to. Anything else that people have discovered besides that? That was great. Thank you. All right, so that's a little bit about online learning pedagogy and thinking about that. I'm going to add that to all of our future classes, because as you are teaching online, we want to share those things that we're all doing that can benefit all of us. And so those are some great ideas that you all brought up, and we'll look forward to sharing more of those in the future. So I'm going to shift now into the assignments for this class. Okay, so I'm moving into what I consider the final assignments in this class. The next assignment. So I'm going to talk a little bit here, and if you've got questions, you can certainly ask those questions either by grabbing the mic or typing them in the chat room. So if you recall, before spring vacation, I said, don't worry about the arts observation. If some of you have done it, that's great. If you haven't, don't worry about it. But I've given it some more thought, and it's still an assignment I want you to all do. And you can do it from home, because you can find something online related to your school in some ways that's related to art. You could be creative. You might find something on Facebook through somebody that's involved, or that, somebody posted their kids piano playing, or something along those lines. And there's several of you that work in most of those schools, so you can always talk to each other to figure out those. If some of you find that it's easier to talk to somebody else and use their art, the project they've already put together, and you want to write about it from your perspective, you can do that as well. So this is an individual assignment, but if you get some ideas from somebody else and use their art, you're certainly welcome to. The piece that I've added to this, because I think it's important for us to know how to do this, is now that all of you who've not done the assignment, as you move forward, I want you to go find the art, write up the observation or the reflection on it, and then I want you to record yourself via Zoom and upload that link to YouTube. One of the things I learned is that most of you have been in technology classes already where you've done that, but now this is even more important to learn how to do that. And so, so now when you turn in the assignment to iLearn, just turn in the YouTube link. For those of you who've already done this assignment, you don't have to do this, but I would really encourage you to do it, because again, this is the mode we're going to be teaching in for the next couple of months. And then until you start to do it, you don't know what it's like. I know that several of you are very accomplished at this, but there are people that probably have not done this. So I wanted to add it to this assignment so that it would nudge you in that direction. And if you need any help with that, I meant to post the link. I've got a visual guide on how to do this. I'll put that in the agenda a little bit later so that you know it's there. But anyway, it's all there. Among your classmates, many of you are very accomplished, as you demonstrated with your historical character performances that you did. So I've just decided to add that to the arts observation. And any questions about that?
Sorry.
Yeah,
so go ahead.
Go, Kiara.
Okay, sorry. So what are we saying in this video? I've already yeah.
So, well, I mean, if you took a picture or you're doing music, then it'd be fun to see that picture on it, right? So I would show the art, and by that you're going to share your screen in order to do that. And then you can basically read your reflection, or you can say, I looked around for art and I couldn't find much, but then all of a sudden I turned the corner and saw this. So give us a tour of that art, right? So if you go to an art gallery, many of you have been in museums where you have put on a headset and they describe the art, right? So this is your opportunity to make this like a museum exhibit.
Gotcha. Okay.
And let's see, somebody else asked, what exactly are we recording ourselves doing? Yeah, so let's think in terms of, you are doing a recording, you're doing the recording for me, but in the future, you may be doing recordings like this for students or other people describing art or things like that. So think of yourself as the curator or the docent in a museum, you know, introducing me to this art or to the music. So,
Rob,
go ahead,
sorry.
Rick.
So now, I know you talked about it, we all have our own personal Zoom accounts. I mean, Zoom.
Yep.
So you're talking about logging into our personal Zooms to record ourselves, and then we'd also upload it to YouTube, or?
Yep. So when you go into there, like I'm doing right now, I clicked on record to my computer. When I finish, and again, it's in that visual guide that I've sent out to you, but I'll send it again.
Okay.
It downloads to your computer, then you upload it to your YouTube channel. It goes really fast, really easy. So, so yeah, by doing it, you'll see how to do it. So that's the main reason of doing this.
I still have a question.
I'm just not clear on why we're also putting it on YouTube if we're doing it on Zoom.
Because it's more accessible on YouTube.
Okay.
It's much more clunky if I have to click on a Zoom link than it is on YouTube.
Okay.
Okay. Somebody else had something else?
Yeah, so I haven't looked at that I guess that piece of Zoom advice that you
the visual guide.
But does that, so we have to like, are we presenting this in order to be able to record it? Because I'm not sure I know how to like just record myself giving them like, can I just record myself on my phone and upload that to YouTube instead of doing it Zoom?
You know, I thought about letting you do that, but I really would encourage you to do it via Zoom, because then you learn how to do it. But basically, you log into your Zoom account, you get ready, the camera's on just like it is right now. You click on record to my computer and show what you have to show.
Okay. Yeah, actually,
Okay.
I think I know what you're talking about. We don't have to wait for participants, or we don't have to have any participants.
No, it's just you.
Okay.
Just you.
I got it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Yeah, and if you want, you can read your reflection to me if you want to do it that way. But you could be more creative now. And what I know now is you're all very creative, especially after those historical character presentations.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So it says that it should be related to our school.
Mm-hmm.
What exactly do you mean by that? Because I am now in Southern California and don't have access to my elementary school. Like, I can't walk on the campus or anything like that.
Right. So let me ask the rest of you, what might be some ways, none of us are supposed to be walking around our schools. So what are some ways that we might find art in certain neighborhoods? What might be some ways to do that?
Maybe the school Facebook or social media pages if they've uploaded something.
Good. Go look for a social media link and see what's there. And it may not be exactly what you want, but that could work. What else?
I know that like for my daughter's elementary school, they're doing their virtual talent show since they can't do it.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So I know, if you're still in touch with maybe like the teachers, they could tell you if there's anything like that going on online.
So talking to teachers, keep going.
Yeah, and I had also mentioned to you, Rob, that I had recorded my daughter's play. And so I would be willing to post part of it on, or share it and post part of it on like a YouTube, and so you guys have access to it, where it's still like private, but you guys can access it if you need something to look at.
That's cool. And then the other thing, as you were talking, I thought, oh, the other population of people that can help you with this assignment are the students in your classroom. And I didn't even think of that till you just kind of brought it up. So
could I do, like, if we had a direct to draw lesson for our students, could I have one of them send me a picture of what theirs came out, like how their art piece was, and use that? Like student artwork?
Yeah, if you can't find anything else, you could use student artwork. But the idea really is to find some sort of public art. But since we're in these times, you could use that. I mean, I'm not going to be really tough on that. But the idea is to think about, how does art enhance your school and what's around there that shows the visual of that. But we can't walk around the school now and look for it. So sure, you could use student art if you wanted.
So with you saying that, I'm assuming like all over the school I'm at in Sherwood, they have murals of sharks in like the ocean. So I can talk about that, right? And I'm sure I can
Yeah,
find a picture of the exact mural on there.
yeah, exactly. Any one of those would be great. Yeah. So yeah, so I'll be pretty, you know, I'm not going to be really hardcore on defining that, but part of this class is realizing how art can interface with history. And if you don't look at art, you can't really do that. So that's the reason for this. Any other questions on this assignment? Great. So, you know, whenever you turn that in, that's fine. Remember the turn-in dates, the due dates are suggested due dates. You're going to turn everything in at some point. Unless you're going to decide you're not going to do this class this semester, at some point you're going to get all these assignments in. So, and I realize you've got other assignments and all that, and hopefully your Edtpa is done. Oh, I'm just curious. I'm going sideways for a minute. When do you get your Edtpa results? Those of you who turned it in first?
Next Thursday.
Next Thursday. Okay, so by the next time I see you face to face, many of you will already find out. Good luck. Hope that you all pass. Okay, so that's that assignment. The discussion boards and digital binder stuff, all that stuff stays the same. This is our, quote, face-to-face week, so there's no discussion board for you. The other class does have a discussion board this week, and you'll have one next week when we don't meet. I'm just calling it face-to-face Zoom, so just so you know the different designations. So that all stays the same. Any clarifications for those items? And if there are discussion boards that you have not posted in, know that I will make my way through and see who's posted and who hasn't. And if you haven't kept up with it, at least a majority of them, then it'll be an opportunity for us to have another interaction.
So our digital binder check number 3 is not due this evening?
No, I moved it to next week. So.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, so those are kind of the ongoing assignments that have taken place in this class. The next 2 big assignments is the history social science module development. In fact, I think I'm going to move to presentation mode because I think you can see this better. So can you see the whole slide? Okay, good. Thanks for nodding your heads because I'm looking at your faces. So the history social science module development connects with your grade level groups, okay? So as on the far left side of this slide, here's the whole picture, right? And just so that you know the whole piece here, and hopefully this puts it in the context by which you can understand how you're going to fit into this and how you individually as groups are going to work together. So if you remember the beginning of the class, you all decided a grade level. Some of you since then have switched grades levels because you've got jobs coming up in the fall and you wanted to move to a grade level that you're going to teach, which is fine. So at that point, the idea was to begin to research history, social science topics based on that grade level, which are the standards and the framework. And hopefully you've been reading those parts and saving those documents in your digital binder. So that was the stuff you were supposed to do early on. At step 2, if you remember one of our classes, I did have you meet in groups to talk about this project and how you as a grade level group may work together. So the idea is that groups work together, you decide on which topics and lessons you're going to work on. As individuals, you are supposed to write one lesson yourself, but you may share those lessons within your group. So know that that's kind of step 2. So we've kind of done that, but we're kind of, oh, wow, look at that. I put step 4 and step 4. Well, you know, the next step above is supposed to be step 3. Anyway, and then this next phase is that you begin to organize this content. And there is this document called the grade level sharing document, which I'm going to show you in just a minute, that you're going to share that information with everybody in the class. So you're going to do your individual work on your history social science module in your digital binder, but then you're also going to contribute to a grade level sharing document, which is what you're going to share with the whole class in the other step 4 there at the very end. Individually, you're going to write that lesson and you're going to teach some lesson. And when you teach the lesson, you're going to teach it online via Zoom, or If you want to record it with something else, you could do it that way as well. But in the ideal world, that lesson when you teach it would be taught with students or possibly colleagues in a class. So one option for that could be that in your group, you all decide to teach the same lesson, and one person teaches it, you all watch it, talk about what was good about it, then the next person teaches it, you go through the same process again, and let's say there's 3 or 4 of you and you all choose to teach the same lesson. You could do it that way. You could all teach different lessons. Some of you may actually have students that come in. You could have your own students you have at home be in your class while you teach it if you want. So there's lots of different ways you can teach this lesson. And let me just name those one more time. You could teach the lesson just one-on-one. You go online in Zoom, you teach the lesson, you record it. That's one way to do it. Number 2 would be have other colleagues when you teach the lesson in the lesson to be other people in the lesson and to also be observers of the lesson. That's another way to do it. A third way would be to actually get students, some students, to come in that you could actually teach the lesson to, and they respond online. And then the fourth, which would be the real ideal, but I know this is going to be more challenging, but in the ideal world, it would be to have the real students that you're teaching in your class be part of this lesson and record it, and that becomes this lesson as well. So there's 4 different ways to present. You know, I haven't written those down for you, but I will do that now after saying those out loud. So any questions about the lesson teaching? And again, you can type it in the chat room or just ask at this point.
So I just have a comment, just because I know you said it's like the most ideal one would be to have a video with our students. MPUSD, we were told we're not allowed to record any meetings with our students.
Yeah.
So that would be like off the table.
So that option's off the table. Yeah. Any other questions? All right. So that's in step 3. That's what you're doing now, right? You're thinking about these lessons. We're going to spend some time talking about lesson planning and stuff in a little bit here.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Hi, Annabelle, what you just said, so we can have them be in the lesson, we just can't record them. Is that what you said?
Right. So like you can't record their faces.
Okay, but we can still do like that third option of having them be like a student in it, just like live.
For this lesson, if you're going to record it, it sounds like there's some issues with recording students, but there are ways around that if you got permissions from certain students to be in there as well. So, but go ahead.
The first option you gave us about like teaching the lesson, you said teach one-on-one Zoom and record it. So did you mean like the same thing, just like ourselves?
Yep, just yourselves.
Okay, and then the second one was like do it with another colleague. So if I had one person just be an observer of like what I would be teaching, then that'd be fine too.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're just explaining how the lesson would go, right? We're not really teaching it since there's no student.
No, you're really teaching the lesson.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So,
yeah. So that's why it's going to be more interesting having people in there, even if you invite your parents in or something like that, right? I mean, you can reach out to lots of people, right? You could have your whole family in there to do the lesson with you if you wanted.
And Rob, you said that this could potentially be a second formal, right? With our clinical coaches.
You'd have to talk to your clinical coach about that, but it does need to be recorded because I want to look at it. And this format, your clinical coaches would, so what we're talking about for this class is one piece, and then they can observe that as well, but they would also appreciate you teaching other lessons like this as well. So, but for this class, there is that one lesson. Other clarifications?
My clinical coach might follow up with you about that.
Yeah. Yes, you're recording the whole lesson, so it's going to be 30 or 45 or an hour. Yeah, whole lesson. So we'll continue to clarify that, but if some of you are ready to go to teach that lesson in the next week and you've got other questions, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, I do want you to teach it via Zoom. Yeah, I do. So I was debating that in my head, but I think Zoom is dynamic in many ways that other applications are not. And I've shown you all how to use Zoom also, so I know you know, and I know you all have access to it. So that's the reason we're going to use Zoom. And then we have a common platform by which to talk about stuff, which is easier with technology as well. So, so I'll leave that at that. So know that you're going to have time to meet with your group a little bit later. So as you meet with your group today, you're going to clarify some of these things, what roles, that sort of thing. And again, I'll say this, I'm going to say it again in a different way, but I just wanted to show you this process. So that's the history, social science module, the grade level group stuff. And Nancy, you're asking any examples. What does that mean? Do I have any lessons of lessons being presented? Ooh, I like that question. I will find some dynamic lessons for you to use as models. It may not be in the history area at your grade level, but that's a good question. And if you find any, let me know, okay? Yeah, we'll leave it at that. Okay, so that was history, social science, that's your grade level groups. Here's the cultural group process. So at the beginning of the semester, you chose a cultural group. When we did meet, our cultural groups met a little bit to talk about how you can organize this stuff. Let me go back a second. So the history, social science module, which is your grade level groups, you're talking about what you're teaching, you're writing lessons, you're talking about all the content there, you're sharing that between yourselves, you're sharing it between all of our classmates, and then you're going to present the material. So those are all the components of the history, social science module lesson. The cultural group lesson is a little different in the sense that you've got a cultural group. Your job was to start looking at it, to use something to look at your particular cultural group, which could be social media, read articles, or things like that. You met as a group, which was step 2, to talk about that and how each of you individually were going to contribute to your combined cultural group sharing document. We will worry more about this at our next class, but again, I just wanted to show it to you now so that you see the flow is similar in both these areas, and you've got 2 different groups that you're working with. With the cultural group, you're combining those resources. You're going to put them all in that cultural group sharing document. As a group, you'll organize your presentation in some way, and then you'll present it. Now, I have not decided how you're going to do these presentations yet, but I just want you to know that this is the overall process, and one step at a time. So that's all those pieces. So now I'm going to go to our agenda document, and just to clarify that, to make sure that we're all on the same page with these assignments. So I'm now on the agenda document. So here's all these future assignments. On the agenda, you will see the 2 documents that you have for each one of these, the grade level planning document and the grade level sharing document. The grade level planning document is the document that you as a group are all sharing, where you're writing your ideas down, who's doing what your ideas are. Somebody's got a great thought, they're going to write it there, because then it's all in one place for all of you to look at. Then with the cultural group, same sort of thing. We're going to worry about this at our next class, but just so you know, that's where we're headed. We're going to worry about all the grade level history, social science module stuff today. So that's the document you're going to fill out today, is that grade level planning document that's there. Any other questions about either the HSS module assignment or the cultural group stuff? Great.
Sorry, can you repeat one more time of how much of it we're recording, like the whole lesson, our entire lesson plan is what we're presenting for the grade level?
Yeah, I want you to think in terms, if you were teaching a lesson, well, it's not too much different than Edtpa, right? Didn't you have to record the whole lesson for that? No? You didn't film the whole lesson? On the front end of Edtpa, didn't you have to film the whole lesson?
You didn't have to.
Oh, you didn't have to?
You had to have 20 minutes. You couldn't have more than 20 minutes of recordings.
Oh, okay. Well, good to know that. In this case, I want you to teach the whole lesson as if you're teaching it online. So that's why I was sharing that dynamic versus static stuff with you earlier so we can think about what makes it better. All right, so those are all those assignments. And so now, so let me go back and look at my agenda here. Oh, we're doing okay. All right, great. I just had to check my time to see where we were if I was going to show you this next part. So, all right, so those pieces are all there for you. So a couple of the input stuff I wanted to share with you tonight. One is, how do we know what we're supposed to teach? So you may or may not know this, and it may be a review for you, but I think it's important for all of us to know. When you think about where do we get the content, the pedagogy, and treatment of students? So the content always comes from the state. The US Constitution, there's Amendment 14 that says education is a good idea, but it's sent to the states to worry about. So education is a states' right event. In other words, every state has a different education system. They all operate in different ways. And if you research education further at some point in your career, or maybe you've already done this, you know that there's quite a bit of disparity from state to state with graduation rates, dropout rates, college going rates, and all those sorts of things. In California, we pride ourselves with all of those areas, and in our individual school districts, I think we do as well. But that's because of our state education system. The federal government has nothing really to say much about our state education system except how the state reports certain statistics to them. And, you know, like dropout statistics, there's a certain way states report that to the federal government. But it's important to realize that it's our California state laws that govern all that stuff. California state laws talk about how we're supposed to teach, what we're supposed to teach. Every standard, every framework, all those documents that you've been looking at were originally in a law somewhere that was passed by our state legislature. So if parents complain about curriculum at some point, part of the answer to that is, well, talk to your state legislator because they're the ones that voted it into place. So there are state laws that protect all students, LGBTQ students, African American students, all students. Those are laws, the treatment of them, and then the same thing is true about the curriculum. It was all voted in at some point by the state legislature, and you can find it all in the state education code should you ever want some real exciting reading. So in California, the laws have also put in place different groups of people that oversee stuff. So the way that you are all being trained as far as your teaching is governed by the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing. They're the ones that have decided the components that are important for us in CSU Monterey Bay to teach. And CSU Monterey Bay submitted originally their program to the California Teaching Credential, and they gave the approval to teach it the way we're teaching it. There's an ongoing oversight by the Commission on Teacher Credentialing over credentialing programs and universities and how each one of you get your credentials. And they continue to update that all the time. The Commission on Teacher Credentialing, they have a lot of power. So just so you know, but we don't often hear about them unless you get in trouble with teaching, then you hear about them. So that's them. The California Department of Education, their job is to oversee the laws that have been passed or to convene committees to put things in place. And once the Department of Education puts together like standards or framework, then it's the state Board of Education then passes those based on direction from the state legislature. So before there's ever standards or frameworks that are written, there was a law that was passed in the state of California that says, here's the money to do this, now go do it. And then the Department of Education, is their job to do it. This Department of Education also oversees the finances of school districts. And that's their main job, the finances and the curriculum and all that sort of stuff. And the Department of Education oversees the writing of standards and frameworks. Once those standards and frameworks are put in place, that's what publishers use to write their textbooks. That's why how in some of your schools, you will see standard numbers, California standard numbers written right in the textbooks, because California is such a big state. When we move in a new direction, textbook companies you know, adjust based on what our state says. So that's the publishers write that, and then it's up to school districts to decide which curriculum they're going to purchase and when they're going to teach it and that sort of thing. So keep this in mind that school boards, they have two main jobs. Their two main jobs are to hire the superintendent and to approve curriculum. Those are the two main jobs of school board members. Now they do lots of other things, but those are the two main jobs they have. So the curriculum that comes from publishers that was overseen and developed through standards and frameworks is how we end up as teachers, what we're supposed to teach in the classroom. So that's the ongoing process. Then as teachers, that's what we're trained in our programs to follow and use and read. And, you know, from my perspective, it's nice to have some sort of guide because especially when you start teaching, you need something to guide you. Now, in most areas, most other subject areas, there are standards and frameworks. So the what to teach, the content, generally are the standards. How you teach it or the pedagogy is generally in the frameworks. And you see that's generally true in all of them. And as you've looked and worked in iLearn and the different assignments that I've put forth, you have downloaded different components of each one of these by grade levels. And you see that each one of these things are there. So just know that the Department of Education publishes the frameworks, they publish the standards. They also have now published resources, great resources from my perspective as I've looked at them. And all of those things are in the syllabus in iLearn as well, that if you want to go and explore them further now that you're writing these history, social science modules, then you're welcome to do so because you may find some great lessons there in addition to whichever ones you create. So that's generally true across all these areas, ELA, math, science, history, social science, ELD, arts, CTE program, whatever program you're in, there's been some sort of state program and some law that has moved us in that direction. So the exception is the history, social science area at this point because the Department of Education wanted to update social science standards and the framework at the same time, but the state legislature said, we don't have enough money for that, and we don't really think it's necessary. So it was just the framework that was updated in 2016. The same is now true with history, science and health framework. It's the same thing. They are updating the framework. They're not updating the standards. So the framework is becoming more and more important as we look at what we're supposed to teach. So like the history, social science standards were updated in 2000. Well, that was after 1998. So basically, our history, social science standards have not been changed since 1998. So you can see the problem with that, which is why we've got the framework. The framework talks about how you deal with various topics that we have now deemed important in the teaching of history, social science, which gets back to all those cultural groups, which you're all studying as well. So that's how this all works. I just wanted to make sure you knew how and why this all comes down and why those standards and frameworks are so important. Any questions about that, standards, frameworks, that sort of stuff? So I'm going to move into inquiry-based lessons, and then we're going to break into our smaller groups in a few minutes and talk about this even more. So what I'm calling, there are regular lessons out there that you've all written. I know you've written lots of lessons, done lots of lesson plans, and you're very familiar with the CSUMB lesson plan template, which is fine. But when you write an inquiry-based lesson, there are other components that are added to a lesson plan that are not part of the CSUMB lesson plan template. And that's why for my class, you've got two different lesson plan templates to use. One, the CSUMB one, and my enhanced inquiry lesson plan template. And they are different. When you write an inquiry-based lesson, the control of learning shifts. It's more of an open-ended learning opportunity. In some cases, it's interpretive. Generally, there's primary source material that's involved in some way. There's more open-ended questions, some guidance. There can be multiple responses. The scaffolds for EL students may look a little different, but you know, inquiry-based lessons, if they're done right, build those scaffolds into the way students interact with each other and the content that you use. For students, it's minimal front loading. A lot of the activity happens during the lesson itself. To do a good inquiry-based lessons is generally longer than one class period. I don't know what a class period is for all of you, whether it's 30 minutes or 45 minutes, but it's something that often is over several days rather than just one day. It's also something that takes additional planning by the teacher, because you really got to think through all these pieces. It's generally some sort of group learning is involved in the inquiry lesson. It's kind of hard to do an inquiry-based lesson all by yourself. So those are the main differences in inquiry-based lesson versus that. And so there are several examples, and I'm going to click on the first link there, which is the link that's in iLearn, and that same link is on all of your history social science module pages, because these are the resources I put together for lesson development. So they're all listed here. So I've given you a brief overview about inquiry-based lessons. You're going to begin to write one, and if you need more help, know that on this document there's more documentation and research that talks about all of these. Some good examples out there, I think, is this website, Bringing History Home. So I'm going to click on this link, and it's going to take me to this website, and I'm just going to show you how this one is organized, Bringing History Home. So they've got curriculum for kindergarten through 5th grade here. So I'll just click on 3rd grade as an example. So they have a lesson on segregation history. They have industrialization history. They have all these lessons. Now, these lessons are important to you because you can find one you like that you could teach, but you could also find one to find a model of how to put these together. So I think these Bringing History Home lessons for elementary classrooms are some of the best that are out there. So just know that those are some examples for you as well. The other thing I want to bring to your attention on this resource page is that PBS Learning has some lessons as well. Those are pretty good. Teaching Tolerance, which we looked at during our social justice lesson weeks, are pretty good as well. All the primary sources that you'll need are all in these links right here, from the Library of Congress to the California Historical Society. You see all those as well. And then the other thing on this page is how to find the literature to go with the lessons that you're teaching. So know that both in your cultural groups and your grade level groups, we want you to include literature, because we know that literature is an access point in many ways, especially in history. So I want you to make sure that there's a good literature list to go with the history social science module you're all putting together. And the same thing with our cultural groups as well, because it's a good place for lots of people to start, especially at the elementary level. So again, I just wanted to touch on those pieces. I wanted you to see that those are some of the differences between inquiry-based lessons. Those are some examples, and now we're going to just take a second to talk about the differences between regular and inquiry-based lessons. So some of the differences, and I'll just type them in here and then you can share some that you're thinking of, is a regular lesson probably is in one class period. And your one class period might be, 15 minutes in kindergarten, 30 minutes in 5th grade or whatever. And inquiry-based is really several class periods. Inquiry-based lessons, it's generally you need a primary source that goes with that, which is one of the ways to cause critical thinking. And then the other thing about inquiry-based lessons is it's usually group or partner work in some ways, because you're asking students to react and that sort of thing. So those are some of the quick differences. I don't think I'm going to dwell on this much more because I want to give you a chance to get into your groups and get going with that. But I just want you to be aware that there are the differences. When you actually work as a group, let's see, where did I put this? I think I put it on the agenda down here. Did I put it there? Nope, I forget where I changed it. What I was suddenly thinking about is, oh, I know where it is. I'm going to move on to these groups. Any questions about inquiry-based lessons? It's like most things, you kind of have to start writing it to experience it, but any lessons that you've done that involve primary sources, where you're examining the documents yourself. If any of you took AP courses in high school, especially AP US history, when you have a document-based question, those are all examples of inquiry-based. The last document I shared is linked on your history social science module document that you downloaded originally at the beginning of the semester. It's also on the assignment link. It's also in the upper section of iLearn, where all the key documents are. It's called Resources for writing your, oh, well, here, I'll show it to you. You know what, I could just do that. I know that visually it's nice to see things, right? So it's in ongoing tools, and down here it's resources, grade level lesson development. So there's that same document there, resources, grade level in iLearn. Any other questions? Great. Okay. All right. So so that's the stuff you're going to start working on now, is writing your lessons. You're going to get together in your group and talk about that in just a minute. So I think we're going to move into that. And I think we're going to, so I'm realizing that I've done a lot of talking. We've all been sitting. So we're going to take a little break, individual break time in a second. I'm realizing that's important. I didn't really build that in here, but we're going to do it because I'm feeling antsy. And if I'm feeling antsy, I'm sure you are as well. So here's how this part's going to go is, I'm going to change this time here. Let's see. So this will be 6 to 6:30 now. All right, so we're going to take about a 10-minute break in just a second. When you get back into your groups, you're going to break into your individual groups, and I'm going to show you that list in just a minute. The main questions for you to think about in your groups is, who's the facilitator, who's going to take notes, who's going to put it all together. The questions for you to think about is there one or many history, social science topics you're going to cover by your grade level? Are you all going to look at explorers, or are you going to do a little explorers and a little Revolutionary War, or whatever your topic is? Who in your group is going to focus on what? How will you divide up the work? If you're all, once you decide on your topics, you know, one person can go worry about all the literature and share that with everybody else. As you develop your resources individually, I want you to also contribute to the group one as well. And then I want you and your group to know how and when your group's going to be meeting. So on this document here, I'm going to shift over now. So those are the main things you're going to do in your group. Again, hopefully one of you in your group has this slide so you know what those questions are. So I'm now clicking on the agenda to the grade level planning group document. The lead person in each group is the one that's going to use this. And I had asked each grade level to paste in their Zoom link. So I see that kindergarten has done that. First grade has done that. Awesome. First grade, second grade, they've got their Zoom link. So for those of you that are in your grade level groups, way to go, awesome. Looks like everybody put their Zoom links in here. So we're going to take, I'm going to figure out how many minute break we're going to take, and then we're going to go into the Zoom rooms. You're going to have your grade level meetings and talk about those things. Is there anything else to talk about as far as that? So the bottom line is we're all going to log out of this Zoom. Oh, I think I'm going to stop the recording right now. That's enough on this.